In the beginning, we were all cheaters, and as a result, nobody was a cheater. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, and welcome to my video on the old days of unintentional cheating. Now, what I was talking about may sound a bit paradoxical. Wait, you were all cheaters, so nobody's a cheater? How does that work? Everyone's cheating all different. What's going down? So, I want to talk about old school magic, the way things were way back in the beginning of the 90s. And since we're talking about cheating, it's going to be unintentional cheating, just so we're clear. Although I do want to throw in one little example of blatant cheating that I remember from my playgroup. Two of my friends bought rocket launchers. And this thing has an activation that says at the end of the turn, you lose the card. But they kept it on the board. Those dastards. So that's the only instance of like actual cheating that I remember from back in the day. And we caught them on that real quick. But unintentional cheating through not understanding the rules properly happened frequently, even if you were somebody who was a half-decent rules monger. Now, it happened on really obvious cases where I would get annoyed. Like I remember I played a Stone Rain, which destroys a land on one of my opponent's lands. And my friend plays his, he's got a Circle Protection red out. He pays 1 mana, and he stops the Stone Rain from destroying my land. And I was like, oh my god, look at that. That enchantment only cost 2, and for 1 white it stopped the Stone Rain? That's amazing. So I went down to the game shop, and I went through the little binders, and I grabbed 4 copies of every Circle of Protection, and they were only like 20 cents each. And I'm pretty sure I said out loud, quick, grab him before he finds out there's a mistake. Like literally out loud as a clueless kid, which is adorable. We chuckle about it now and again. So I buy all these circles. I got 4 of each of them. And understand, they're only 20 cents a card. But my allowance was like $2 a week, boys. $2 a week. That's 10 Circles of Protection. That's like 2 weeks to get the full set, right? Like that's 2 weeks of my allowance that I've saved up. And I get home and I read the cards and it says prevent all damage from, and I literally picked up the phone and I was like, what the hell, man? And I started losing it on my friend. You cheating sack of crap. And between that and the rocket launcher, it like read every card. Don't trust your opponent to know what the deal is. Read every single card. But even with all that, I mean, there were other situations where I, for one, would screw up with things that made logic sense. Like, you'd look at the game had 5 colors and artifacts, right? So I'm playing with Colossus of Sardia, which is 9 mana for a 9/9 trample. Like, grah! I'm playing in a big black deck with Dark Rituals to get it out. It's only going to be able to swing once and I'm not going to be able to untap it. But I'm a noob, so who cares, right? And so I've got this Colossus of Sardia, but problem is people play Artifact Blast. And Artifact Blast is 1 red, counter target artifact spell. Although the wording of it, like, it's got the old school wording. It doesn't say counter target whatever. It's a strange wording. Regardless, what it does is it counters target artifact spell. So I go to play my Colossus of Sardia. My buddy plays an Artifact Blast on it, and in response I played Deathlace. That's right, I literally used Deathlace. It's a rare too. 1 black to turn a card black. So I make the Colossus of Sardia black, and then I go, your Artifact Blast doesn't destroy it anymore because it's not an artifact. Because at that time, there were no such thing as colored artifacts. And nobody thought, oh wait, no, it's still an artifact. It's just colored. Like, we didn't think on that technical level. And you couldn't go online. There was no internet to check rulings on. You just had your local group. You had to sort it all out together. So this wasn't just limited. Like, even after you move outside of your play group and you go to the tournament environment where you're expecting to find more like skilled and versed players, that's who you're going to learn from. They also don't know what they're doing. So then you just pick up bad habits from them. Hymn to Turok was played in such a, like, Glasses of Urza was such a busted card back then. If Glasses of Urza, 1 casting cost artifact, tap it, look at your opponent's hand. Now, whoop-de-doo. I mean, Telepathy beats it down. Telepathy is just like an enchantment that says you get to see your opponent's hands at all times. So that's even better. But anyways, Glasses of Urza was a big deal back then. You could tap it, look at your opponent's hand. So here's what people would do. 2 black, him to Turok. You have to discard 2 cards at random. In the middle of the spell resolving, tap my Glasses of Urza to look at your hand, and I pick the 2 cards at random. Wait, how do you get there? The reason that people logically thought that is you would go ahead, and when it was time to discard at random, shorthand for randomization was this. Somebody would just hold their hands out, grab a couple cards. There, they've been selected at random. Like if you hit me with the Hypnotic Spectre, just grab a card at random. But then somebody else went along and was like, well, I'm picking from your hand. I'm just going to look at your hand. And people went for that. And we were all doing that for a while until I went, wait, this doesn't make any sense. And other people started to clue in, and we just eventually got like that stuff weeded out. But that's not even what I'm talking about. When I talk about everybody being a cheater, because not everybody played Glasses of Urza. Not everybody did that, right? But everybody did one thing. We all did the exact same thing that is 100% cheating now. But in a way, it wasn't cheating because everybody did it. And that's mana weaving. If you don't know what mana weaving is, it's a very simple concept. The idea is you would take your deck. Normally, the old school land theory was thus. A Magic deck is constructed, 60 card deck goes 40 card non-land, 20 card lands. That was the recipe across the board. And every time you wanted to scale up, you would just add, like for every 2 cards you're adding, you would add a land. So you would go 60, 63, 66, 69, 2 cards land. That's how I did it. That's how I built my deck. And that's how everybody did their lands. And you would see them getting their deck set up, 2 cards land, 2 cards land, 2 cards land. So when you put your deck together, 2 cards of this pile, land, 2 cards land, 2 cards land, 2 cards land, your whole deck. Now that is known as mana weaving. And obviously the purpose of that is to, Magic the Gathering is very tricky when it comes to the randomization mana hosing you. Either you don't get enough lands to play, or you get mana flooded, which means you just get a ton of mana. On top of that, Magic the Gathering used to have much different mulligan rules. Now the mulligan rules are much smoother. If you don't like your hand, you toss your hand back into your deck and you grab a new hand and you have 1 less card. And then after that, you even get to look at the top card of your deck to smooth out your next draw. So if you need more lands or whatever, you can make sure your next draw falls in line with your hand. So you have the ability to sculpt what's going on. But in old school Magic, mulligan rules were brutal. You could only get a mulligan under very, very specific circumstances. Either 0 lands in your hand, 7 lands in your hand, or your opponent is in that situation, and then you get to take a mulligan as well. So one of the players in the game has to have a 0 land or all 7 land hand, which is insane if you think about it. So trying to get around that, people would mana weave their decks. It just ensures that you get a decent amount of lands to be able to play the deck. And nobody thought of it as anything negative. Literally, it was how everybody was taught to play. But at the root of it, it's cheating. Because you're stacking the deck. That's what you're doing. You're stacking the deck to ensure that you get the lands. So nowadays, if you don't randomize your deck enough after that, that's considered cheating. So there's literally no point to mana weaving, because if you do stack the lands like that, you have to sufficiently randomize your deck afterwards to ensure actual randomization. And mana weaving does not allow for actual randomization. It's genuinely deck stacking. It's cheating. We all did it. But game theory in terms of Magic the Gathering was a lot simpler then. And the mana weaving wasn't a huge issue because, like I said, because we were all cheaters, nobody was. It did, and there was very, very few ways where it actually genuinely affected the games because everybody had a reasonably decent access to land. I mean, we would all still shuffle our decks afterwards, whatever kind you want to do, rifle shuffle or whatever. The few instances where mana weaving became an issue was things like pile shuffling. What some people started to do was, because you're allowed to pile shuffle your opponent's deck, people would just take their opponent's deck and they would pile shuffle it into 3 piles and then just stack those piles. And if somebody's mana weaved their deck, then essentially you've sorted almost, if not all their lands, into 1 pile. And now they're either going to get all their lands or no lands. Like they're gonna, you're going to be screwed by that. And actually there was even a precursor to that. And I used to take advantage of it with the Millstone. I actually did a video on the new version of the Millstone artwork. So if you haven't checked it out, I'd advise going and checking that lore video out. It's a good one. I'll put a link to the lore videos at the end of this video. But anyways, Millstone was actually something that I used that really genuinely took advantage of the mana weaving scenario, because Millstone mills exactly 2 cards off of your opponent's deck. So basically, if you could get your opponent into that mana weave rut where they're drawing land, and then it's 2 cards land. They draw the land, you mill them for 2. They draw the land, you mill them for 2. So each turn they're drawing a land while you're just milling away all their other cards. That was the sweet spot. And I never thought about it back then, like, oh, it's, you know, it's because of mana weaving or whatever. I just literally, we all built our decks that way, and it was just, you become accustomed to it, and you know, if you can get somebody locked into that land rut, it's brutal. And it made Millstone, that's actually what made Millstone a lot more effective. Millstone was okay in terms of being a deck grinder, like I'm going to take your deck down, but at 2 cards a turn, it's pretty slow. Magic was a slower game, but at 2 cards a turn, it's still a pretty slow way to try and deck death somebody. But once you factor in the fact that it could actually completely neuter their ability to play the game for a considerable amount of time, it changed everything. It's just interesting to look back at these little notes in Magic history and how things were wildly different, and we were all cheaters everybody was a cheater who stacked their deck. We were all taught to do it, but it didn't matter, and we all had a great time. So, let's check in with the 6th color of Magic.
Jesus. Your turn, Mike.
This is fine luxury cardboard rectangles you got there.
Oh, thanks.
Why does this sound so familiar?
That does sound familiar. Fellas, are we MTG perp?
No, we're not fucking MTG perp. It's your Go Hatcher.
Why do we all remember that?
Why us?
And why now?
You guys are being fucking stupid. Look, let me call my mom. Hey, Mom. Yeah, no. Hey, it's me. Yeah, no, sorry. Hey, am I a YouTube content creator? I don't know, around like 2018. You knew and you said nothing? Yeah, I understand. I understand that it's weird that I'm repeating our entire conversation. I'm making sure everybody in the room understands the severity of this. Well, I don't want to see him.
Dude, what'd she say?
It's true. We're MTG perp. She said she watched a couple, but she liked. I don't know. She said she watched them. She didn't say she liked them, but said she saw a couple videos.
Dude, that sucks.
It's your turn.
Sugar.
Why couldn't we beat the professor?
Oh, Professor's so good.
So good.
And together,
We're the 6th color of Magic.
If you have not already, make sure you are subscribed to my 2nd channel. I'm inching the way up to 1,000 to unlock more features over there, and I'm loving it. We're having a lot of fun over there too. I do live streams and videos over there on top of everything that I do here. I may even have a couple other channels that are kind of hidden, but we'll talk about those another time. And that being said, it's time to roll that golden scroll because we got some new members joining up. Tristan, you eased on in, bro. We'll see you at the bottom. Blue Max, you hopped on board. Glad to have you here, my friend. You will see your name at the bottom of the scroll. And to David Foreman, who upped his pledge. Thank you very much. I will mention, for anybody who didn't know, last night in the live stream, because David said this to me, he wasn't aware that you're allowed to pledge more than $1 on Patreon. You can support me at whatever level you want to. I'm totally cool with that. Looking for one more to get the Golden Lords up to a thick, fat, juicy 100. Oh, yeah. So, thanks for coming by, guys. And over here, let's say over here is the way to check out my Magic lore, and over here is the way to come check out my other channel. Hail to the king, baby!